Hello and welcome back to my walkthrough of episode Gladiolus here in Final Fantasy 15. In the last episode we've hit the first two campsites, we've completed the first trial, and now the trials will start coming thick and fast as we head through the middle sort of section where there's lots of mini-bosses. Things start to happen quite a lot faster, and essentially, yeah, certainly things start to move a bit far. I think there's only one battle between where we just had it and this next battle.
And far less experienced. It's a wonder I even made it out alive.
Okay.
This place look familiar to you? Vaguely. The younger me had little mind for taking in the sights.
So we'll pick that up as we're hearing more about Core and what he went through, and again, and also how he earned that name, the Immortal. So climb up here and up here once more. If I do miss an item drop, I will most likely try and mention it in one of the other in the score attack mode version. But essentially the thing is that I can't tell because I've already got the trophy, and therefore the only way I would know that I have everything is via the trophy, or if I didn't lose any health and didn't heal at all, which unfortunately probably isn't going to happen as much as I might wish that I was good enough for. So ahead we can see some more enemies, and we can also see the columns. And this is what we're talking about. I mean, I can grab a massive column, and unfortunately I've got to clicking the wrong button there, but so yeah, so some enemies that may be familiar depending on sort of where you've got to in the game by this point. I'm pretty sure we've definitely encountered Bullets. Don't think we've encountered Wyverns yet. So again, you notice that red aura. The red aura means that we won't be able to block that attack.
Just like I taught you. Ready? Raring to go.
And that is a pain throughout this. You sort of, the Bullets especially, sort of have are pretty common abusers of these unavoidable attacks in terms of transport. That doesn't mean they're particularly difficult, but you do need to worry about it. So yeah, so there's the first introduction to the columns. The columns are awesome. They do a hell of a lot of damage. You are obviously hampered carrying a massive column around. You don't have the same sort of mobility. But it does do a bunch of damage, and that is particularly useful, obviously. I don't think there's any drops around here, so we will look to move forwards. And so again, we'll try and tear them all down. I don't know exactly how many there are, but I remember I definitely got the column one on my first try, so it's not that hard to, just sort of keep a track, look at whichever columns you can actually pick up, like this one. They all have the same sort of red bar across the top and aren't connected at the top to anything, so that's sort of how you recognize them, and then you can pick them up and, drop them. But yeah, so they're like the second sort of, I guess, collectible, you could almost call it. So anyway, we'll head through here, and I'm pretty sure we'll get really close to the second big boss trial chamber, I think. If my memory serves me correctly. There are also no
trial chamber.
columns in
And another
areas that we
chance for the
don't
warriors to
have
impart their
enemies.
wisdom. It won't come easy.
So, chamber number 2, and this is also a pretty mental battle. So that is Enkidu. And essentially Enkidu, if for those of you who don't know, Enkidu has an important role to play within the Epic of Gilgamesh, which, if you're wondering, is sort of where the, you know, where Gilgamesh comes from, like as in the name. So we can see that Enkidu is vulnerable. Again, we need to be aware that certain attacks will be unavoidable. So, we can deliver some devastating tempests. Ah, damn. Okay. So, obviously we do have various items, you know, regeneratives, as they call them. And the great thing about, you know, using something like a Phoenix Down is that it immediately gives you, like, a regen. I always think when he's gone into this sort of red stage where it's very difficult to block all of his attacks, if you can just whack him with a column, it works really well because it usually knocks him down. As we should probably high potion. Yeah. So he's finally out of his impossible to block stage, which is really good. Ah, damn. So there, we finally get our first, like, major parry. And there we go, the Enkidu goes down. Lovely, okay. Did that a little messily. I didn't really want to, obviously, you know, need to use a Phoenix Down, but he's not the easiest vassal, obviously, you know, being flying and all that sort of stuff. He does have a long sort of period where he goes into, you know, unblockable state, and so you do need to be very much aware that of sort of when you can actually attack him, at what points are you actually capable of dealing him damage relatively freely. And I wasn't getting any parries there, and as I've mentioned before, parries are pretty vital in order to actually unlock the most out of the battle system. So I don't think there's any collectibles, so I think we should just pop over here and we'll just check this room. There is one. So we'll pick that up. You can see our rage meter is actually really high, which is going to be good for the next battle.
Venture forth, young warrior, bearing our hopes and dreams.
So the door to the next area is opened. We can now finally unlock the Maelstrom Glaive art. I just really want to see if Gladio, like, does he get stronger throughout? It doesn't look like he does. Thought that'd be quite cool if he sort of, you know, if you can see him getting stronger throughout.
Skills shared by the souls that passed out for generations. The shield of the
Okay, so we're at ×3. That is Maelstrom. Boom. Oh. It's so satisfying getting off a Maelstrom in a large group of enemies and just destroying them all. Now, I should say that obviously I am swiping down a lot of these boxes and stuff. You don't need to. There are no hidden items in any of the boxes as far as I'm aware. So you don't... Well, I say as far as I'm aware. I know there aren't because there's a trophy for it. I think when I first played through it, I was like, you know what, I'm going to smash everything. And it kind of, you know, it's entirely pointless, essentially, is what I'm trying to say. You do not need to worry about it. There's a potion there. This is another area where we can use a pillar if we wanted to.
Gotta say, this place ain't like anywhere else.
So you notice that just attacking does not increase your rage. And so if you want to start, you know, if you want to increase that multiplier, you've got to stop and you've got to start blocking. And I think that's the first sort of thing that really, you know, you might not initially sort of get the hang of. Because it's a little weird, sort of, you know, being like, okay, so this thing's called rage, and yet you might think, you know, the one sort of the main way of expressing rage is by attacking things, and yet no, you've actually got to take damage. You've got to withstand damage, and you know, similarly along those lines, you've got to be careful that you don't, that when you're blocking, you don't let it just overwhelm you, and you know, because if you hold down the block button for too long, then you'll stop blocking, your shield will break, and you'll become vulnerable. So it's important to remember that you do have that limit. Cool. Okay, so we uproot those 3 columns. I'm pretty sure we're good for everything else. I think even if we weren't, most things will probably get cut off by this point, so onwards, forwards. We'll see how we fare as we get another pickup there.
All of them fools, unprepared for the dangers lurking within. They all meet with the same fate, as will you.
I don't think so.
Think what you may, but I know otherwise. The Lucis you call home is nothing like the Lucis I once served. Your age has forgotten the horrors of war, coddled by the king, and drunk off the complacency of peace. No shield worthy of defending the true king could be born from such depravity.
Thanks for the vote of confidence.
So he obviously
Look on
has
the bright
a
side.
strong belief
Everyone
in
loves
sort
an
of, you
underdog.
know, the lack of strength of people. So, new enemy, the Bandersnatch. Now, we have faced one of these in, oh, that worked really well. Perfect timing, really. So there we get a nice link strike. So the other thing to always remember with Gladiator is that essentially his attack animations are really long. And so you're never really going to be able to swiftly move from, you know, attack into defense. If you're attacking, you've got to go all out, and if you're defending, you've also got to go all out, pretty much. can smash the Bandersnatch down using the columns, which was very satisfying, it must be said. There is another pickup just at the start there. And another column along one of these bridges, namely that one. We should uproot and drop. I don't think there's another save point before the next trial, if I remember correctly. There's a bit of a gap between the rest points, the campfires. So fly up, climb up the cliff.
Tall, even when your flesh fails you? Or will you fall to your knees?
I guess we'll find out. So, another battle here with the Bullets. So the Bullets do have as we've mentioned before, sort of this big tendency of going into an attack which we cannot block. I think I want to save Maelstrom for the next. The next challenge. So down goes that Beulah, lovely. There are a lot of columns around this area, again sort of highlighting, I believe, sort of like the game saying, you know what, these columns are actually really useful because they, I think a single strike from a column essentially immediately makes an opponent vulnerable, and when they're vulnerable they take, obviously, I'm sure they take a multiplier to the damage that they receive. I don't know what multiplier that is, but I'm sure they will. Otherwise there would not be nearly as much sort of encouragement to do so, as we can find another thing by one of these columns. There's another column to uproot there. And we'll drop. Lovely. So let's just make a quick check. Yeah, I think that's all the columns. Sweet. Okay, so now what we can do is we can go straight past this and hit another collectible, another potion, and then we'll start climbing once more of these long sort of wooden pathways. Oh, this might be the next campfire, actually. Yeah, it is the next campfire. Okay, cool. There's a collectible up there. And there may well be one on the other side. We'll just check before sitting down with a nice sort of... have another nice chat with Core. It looks like that is a no to another collectible.
Take a load up.
And the great thing, obviously, about being able to lie down is also it allows you to heal and also give you some small buffs, which are valuable in, you know, even in the sort of the meagerness that they are. So that should be, yeah, 48. Okay. Been about 20 minutes so far then, that tells me.
Never thought I'd make my way back to the tempering grounds. You said it's been 30 years. Were you as immortal then as you are now? If you want to know, I'll talk. The Blade Master. What was he like? I don't remember much, except for those eyes. They pierced my heart and peered right into my soul. It was like she knew my every move even before I did. Try as you may, there's no fooling those eyes. We'll see about that.
So we'll see more about Kor and his encounter with the Blade Master, with Gilgamesh. And now we can head through into the next area. See, immediately there is another collectible for us to find.
He who protects the king must boast muscle and metal, both finely tempered. Should he lack either, the shield will shatter.
So these Souls of Fortitude, there seem to be the red ones, which are essentially, they have the capacity, like the golden ones, do have the capacity for unblockable attacks. Oh no, it seems they all do actually. That one's so. I'm pretty sure that would be our 5th link, so that would be the trophy. It was either the 5th or 6th, so I'm pretty sure we would have got the trophy for getting Link Strikes with Kor this playthrough, which is good to know. It's important to know that the score attack version, you do not have Kor at all. Kor does not turn up throughout, if I didn't make that clear before. That has its benefits and its limitations. Obviously, it means you get all the points, which is exactly what you want. At the same time, Kor is handy in that he sort of distracts quite a lot of the enemy fire from you, which is always helpful. So, another area, another pillar for us to dislodge. But first we have this Oh, perfect.
Just like I taught you. Ready? And raring to go.
So that went really, really well. You can see his health is absolutely pitiful right now. We've got so much damage off on the Inannaduru. And how did we do that? Well, we had double parry, which took our multiplier up to 3, I think. You can see these guys can actually block us, which is quite interesting. Come on, let me stand up. The big guy hitting me. So I think that's the Inannaduru down. Yeah, there we go. Lovely. Just take a potion here.
The penultimate trial awaits. Prove to them you're prepared to serve as the shield of the chosen king.
Oh, you see how much damage you do when you're up ×4. All the damage. And that's why getting these multipliers, that's why, playing the system and making sure that you're not just swinging wildly at all attempts, because it's really tempting to do that, because Gladio, he controls great. You feel like, you're going to have loads and loads of, capability to just sort of maneuver around and smack everyone. But if you actually want to be doing damage, you've got to take, you've got to take those hits, you've got to build up that rage bar and then smack them with huge combos, huge glaive arts. And that's, it's a really nice, it's got a nice sort of flow, counter flow sort of system to it. It's very different to like playing with Noctis, but in many ways you could sort of expect it to. Because Gladio is, not quite Noctis. Maybe. Yes, there we go. Lovely. I wanted the chance to sort of just practice. Again, you know, each of these enemies has their own sort of, you know, little tells with the various attacks they do. It's important to know them so that when it comes to score attack, you can get those parries off pretty efficiently, which is probably what I've been failing to do quite a lot of the time. Okay. Challenge number 3, which is the final one, I believe, before...
Be true, for the shield of the king must deceive none, not even himself.
Yeah, easier said than done.
Pretty sure this is the last one before finishing off, so... Theoretically after this, there should be another... at least I would certainly expect there to be another... so we can pick up another campsite, and we can stay there with core, and then we'll probably be near enough done. So, a massive demon-type enemy, a Humbaba.
Not the arsenal at your behest.
Potion. So again, he's going to... So, you can see what he's done there is he's put a buff on himself. He's increased his strength and his... you know, see, he's put a big buff on himself. Okay, so that's that one. He does a lot of damage. You know, don't be afraid to use your healing items. But you can see we're doing pitiful damage. And again, I need to be careful because I'm getting a little over anxious to deal damage here. I'd love for him to... Yes! Okay, that gives me times 4. Now I'll hit him with a big Maelstrom. Smash! Oh, beautiful damage. He's down to half health already. Occasionally he will just sort of stop and just won't seem to do anything. But again, I mean... And there we go, beautiful, that went down, that went pretty much perfectly there. Really, really good. Essentially, if you remember right at the start of this, it asked whether we wanted the Dual Master Glaive art already. That is what you get, I believe, for defeating Gilgamesh. I'm almost certain you get it for defeating Gilgamesh at the end. That is essentially something you can tie onto the end of Maelstrom. It's another Glaive art. It does huge damage, immense damage, and is incredibly important. So I'll hopefully be able to show, well, I'll certainly be able to show that off when we get around to the score attack playthrough. And also when we do the final trial, which I'm assuming... Because I'm pretty sure we get that Glaive art before then too.
Now naught but the final trial awaits you.
So there we go. We complete that trial. Beautiful. We now have the third of the Soul's Trials. An aura envelops his blade, allowing him to deal damage to Gilgamesh.
Maybe you've got what it takes after all. Maybe.
We now can finally get damage Gilgamesh. He is no longer immortal to us.
And the Blade Master is a more formidable foe than any you've faced thus far.
And so we have sort of the finale area here, this final little section, and well, beforehand we have a rest site.
Rest up while you got the chance.
After this, we're going to call this episode to an end, I think, and then in the next episode, we're going to take on the Blade Master himself in Gilgamesh. And then we'll probably also try the final challenge, the final trial, just to essentially, you know, finish off, have both those sort of two big combat challenges, those two big bosses in the same chapter, I think would be really quite cool. The same episode, I should say.
Well, what about you? I want to know what was going through your head back then. You that interested in me? I mean, you were a lot younger than I am. And a lot brasher, too, if you can believe it. Wouldn't listen to a single word anyone said. I thought I was invincible. No one could stop me. Until he cut me down to size. I was cast out in defeat, my hubris laid bare for all to see. You really are immortal, they said. And it stuck.
That's rough. Still, you made it back alive. Something no one else has ever done. And I respect that.
So there we finally find out where Kor's name comes from. Why is he called the Immortal? It's because he came out of these tempering grounds alive. But in sort of a twisted part on Gilgamesh's part, you know, it actually is that Kor himself was defeated by Gilgamesh. He was not, Gilgamesh could have killed Kor, but instead chose to leave him alive in order to sort of, you know, forever be taunted by this nickname of being immortal, even though he probably believes, you know, he deserves, or at least, you know, he deserved to die. But at the same time, Gilgamesh must have seen something in him. Why on earth would he have kept him alive if that wasn't the case? So there we go. That is it for this episode. Hope you'll join me on the next. We'll be taking on Gilgamesh.